Hello, everyone. Good evening. We have Johanna here who needs no introduction, but I will still go ahead and do some formalities. So Johanna is an author, several books. She has a website. I strongly encourage you to go and look at her website. Her blog is just amazing. I am so indebted to her from my early days when I was still just a business analyst and not yet well into my Agile journey. It has helped me tremendously be more pragmatic at what value I bring. So I'm grateful. I will pass this evening on from here on for Johanna to present us all the gems that she's got in store for us. Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you so much. And I'm really delighted to know that you've been reading my stuff for a while and found value in it. So let's talk about modern agile management for continuous innovation and value delivery. I will be taking questions during this presentation, so feel free to type your questions in the chat. And when I need a drink of water, I will stop and answer questions. Okay, so what I see a lot in my clients is that the senior leadership says, we want the agile transformation. And they think an agile transformation is more, faster, cheaper, right? It's all about value delivery and how can we get more from less, which is kind of crazy. And they're not wrong for wanting that, right? I think that if there is a way to get more and faster and cheaper, why would you not want it? But the problem with something like that is that they tend to install a framework. I'm not sure how you can install a framework except over existing practices and philosophies. And that means there's no agile culture. And if we think about what an agile culture is, it's how teams collaborate to deliver the first thing of value and then get feedback on it, right? So an agile culture is all about double loop learning and collaboration and working together. We rarely get that with a framework. And I should say that all of that collaboration is focused on the customer. All that delivery of value focused on the customer, right? So without a customer focus and without an agile culture, we often find that these transformations fail. So if we don't talk about the culture, how we treat each other, what we reward, and what we can discuss, then we are not addressing some of the root causes of why we are not agile now. So I have found that a lot of the reasons in my clients for their failed agile transformations is because the managers don't change. The managers don't collaborate as a team, and neither do the teams, right? It's still, I'll take this story or I'll start this story, and it's not a culture of collaboration focused on the customer. Sorry. I get to blame this on allergies, prime allergy season. So what I want you to remember is this is not about blaming the managers. The managers are part of the entire system, the entire environment in the organization. So while you might say, it would be really nice if the managers could do something, yes, there are at least 3 things they can do. That's the point of this presentation. But managers are not to blame for the way the environment is. There's a very famous saying, things got this way because they got this way, right? Every system creates the environment for the system to replicate. So I want to talk about 3 big ideas in this presentation. I'm going to talk about creating management teams with an overarching goal without individual goals for each manager. to reduce organizational WIP, that's work in progress, and to eliminate performance management. Okay, those are the three big ideas. So let me first talk about creating management teams with a single overarching goal. As I talk about this, I want you to think about what prevents you from doing innovation now. Often it's policies from other people. It's a focus on individuals and individual rewards. There's no overarching goal. I don't know if any of you have ever been on a team where you're supposed to take work off of a backlog, not a product backlog, but just a backlog. And you're supposed to work on that first thing, which is on product one, and then the second thing on product two, and then the third thing back on product one, the fourth thing on product three. That's not how we get innovation. We don't have an overarching goal for the work that we're doing, never mind for the team. And if you think about how you innovate now, you trust the people with whom you work. And if you don't trust them, how can you innovate, right? So we need trust for teams and people. If you think about what causes all of this, this is theory X management styles. So back in the 1950s, I believe it was Douglas McGregor, came up with theory X and theory Y. His last name was McGregor. I don't remember his first name. And if you think about theory X, right, that theory X says people avoid work, people need to be controlled, people don't want responsibility, money motivates people, they have no creativity except for getting around the rules. That's theory X. Now, theory Y says people want to master their work. People can manage themselves. People want responsibility, and they want to learn and accomplish something greater than just what they are, and that people are creative. So I will not call out names, but if you are willing to put in the chat, what does your organization look like most? Are you mostly theory Y? Put your name in the chat, all that good stuff. Are you mostly theory X? This is not about blaming who you work for. This is about assessing your organization. I see a lot of Ys. This is excellent. Oh, I really like this. Oh, and one person says 90% theory X. Okay, that's where they are in where the managers are in their careers and what the organization values, right? If the organization rewards theory X behavior, that's what the managers will do, because that's where you get people to say stuff like, you can't fight City Hall, right? So I'm delighted that most of you are theory Y and a couple of you are theory X. But as Meenakshi says, small incremental improvements, that's what we need, which is the whole point behind agility. So if you're not sure if your organization uses theory X, think about the demand for detailed plans up and down through management. So we often think of detailed plans at the team level, but the reason most managers want those detailed plans is they have to report up to their managers and up to their managers. I'm working with the VP of product right now, well, a couple of them, and one of them is really working for a theory X organization. They want guarantees, they want predictions, they want all kinds of forecasting, and the teams, and they have so much with a work in progress in the organization that any forecast anybody creates is just wrong. So this one manager is really having trouble. He's called a VP of product, although he then reports to another senior VP. Yeah. And this demand for detailed plans up and down the organization is an indication that they really think about theory X. If your organization says everybody has to use the same board, everybody has to use the same approach to agility, I've never seen that work. So that's a typical theory X kind of point of view. If you have a separate deployment team or a change control board, and a lot of people will tell me, oh, DevOps is absolutely agile, but I want to know, why are they separate from the collaborative team who's working together to create the value? You've seen architects handing down, and I really do mean handing down, right? The architect is senior, and oftentimes they just say, it should work like this, instead of the team's experimenting. There's more paperwork and bureaucracy and rules. I have some very funny stories about how one of my clients' rules really made it impossible for me to actually get to my my workshop with them on time. So a lot of organizations think that they're theory Y, but they act as if they're theory X. So if you think about what teams at all levels need, they need to know what the business outcomes are. What is the value that we get by delivering to this overarching goal? What are the guidelines? Are there guidelines that we need to live with? So if you work for a regulated industry, yes, you have plenty of guidelines. You might even need constraints, such as don't break the existing product, don't spend more than X amount of money. Please all decide when you are going to take vacation, because we need some of you on call at all times. I mean, those are constraints, and you can either live within those constraints and figure out a way to make them reasonable, or you need to find a different place to work, right? These are all reasonable things as long as we know about them. Now, I also think that all teams at all levels need to learn very fast from experiments. How short an experiment can you do? How fast can you learn from it? And that in terms of delegation, that managers need to delegate problems and outcomes, not tasks, right? So what is the problem we want to solve? How will we know we have achieved that problem? Or I should say that solution. That's how you delegate work. So a lot of organizations create silos of management. And this is one of my clients. I have not yet succeeded in changing their org chart. They have started to change how they work together. So there's this VP of product development, there's a dev director front end, a dev director middleware, a dev director back end, a dev director platform and engine, right? You can see the architectural layers just from the org chart. This is Conway's law. And then there's the director of QA, which is the first time everything comes together, and the director of tech ops. Now, the worst part is, most of these people, when I started to work with them, every single one of these people had a different goal. Every single one of these people had different individual rewards. So the director of the front end had a reward based on how much the people like the user interface, the customers. The middleware director had a reward based on the speed with which the middleware offered the data to the various other pieces of the architecture, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and the worst part was the director of QA was rewarded based on how many problems all the testers found. So was this a collaborative team? Absolutely not. So they had almost no management collaboration. Their decision-making was very, very slow, and they optimized at the bottom of the organization rather than optimizing for an overarching goal. So when you see that managers don't have cross organizational goals, you typically get experiences like this. Oh, and one of the reasons that they had so much turnover was because people just could not manage how their leaders were really not leading. So instead, if you create management teams, right now, do these have to be management teams that the senior leadership creates? No, you don't. But you do need to have goals across the organization. So this organization now has a director team where the directors actually collaborate on what do we want the products to do? How do we want our teams to work? What would make it easier for our teams to deliver faster? And then there's the managers who also have a team. They tend to solve problems that the people cannot solve. And the directors tend to solve the problems that the organization needs solved, right? So these are management teams. And when I said, when I first started to work with this client, I said, you have senior leadership teams, right? You call the people at the senior leadership level, a senior leadership team, and they work together, they collaborate. And we have product and feature teams at the bottom of the organization. So what prevents you from having cohorts at each level? And when they started to work together, that's when they could say to their managers, right? So the directors actually started. The director said, we want to be a director cohort. And here are the goals that we have as a cohort. That they actually told their VPs what they wanted. And then they could create management teams at the level below them. So it worked out really well, but it took a while, right? This is not something that you can just change overnight. Anytime you think about changing management, which is really about the culture, things take a while. So what I really like to say is that every team creates their agile approach, including the management teams. How often do they want to retrospect? How often do they want to use their learning? Do they want a little Kaizen every single day or every other day, as I recommend that product and feature teams do? Or do they want something a little bit more, a little less frequent? But how do they know that their cohort is working? How do they know where to go next? I mean, we all have backlogs. Are we going to admit that we have them, or are we going to try and make them a secret? Now, before I go on to idea 2, let me ask if anybody has a question on big idea 1, which is theory Y for management teams. No? Okay, I will continue. So let me talk about reducing organizational WIP. WIP is work in progress. And Manashi, if I don't say that again, please type it again into the chat. Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
So let me talk about the myth of 100% utilization. When we think about, I don't know how many of you have managers who call you resources. The reason they call you resources is that that's a legal term from cost accounting. And in cost accounting, we think that resource efficiency, making sure every single person is busy all the time, that's 100% utilization, that we will get more work out of them. But this is a parking lot and roads at 100% utilization. Nobody's going anywhere. Well, except where the roads are not 100% utilized, right? So resource efficiency optimizes for outputs and time. And instead, we need to optimize for deliverables and value. right? The flow of work. And for managers, that's the flow of decisions. So when management teams work together, they make decisions much, much faster. You don't have to go up and down the hierarchy to get a decision, right? The managers work together, they have a decision. So how did this get started? Well, it got started a long time ago. I have, I'm sure, more gray hair than anybody on this call. Back in the 70s, when I was a software developer, and we had slices of time on the big computer. If you did not get your slice of time, well, that was, I only had that one slice of time once a day. So I did everything, not so much to stay busy, but to optimize for that one slice of time. Because when computers are busy on one thing at a time, their flow is really fabulous. Now think about your computer. I happen to have MacBook Pro from 2020 or something, 19, something like that. Before that, I had a 2013 MacBook Pro. And I had to start closing down because my machine was 100% utilized. Even machines cannot manage 100% utilization. So really, we really need to think about what makes sense for people, right? People, I find that, 60% utilization is really perfect for people. Having enough slack in our personal systems means we can respond to emergencies, we can help somebody else, help them get their work done faster, work as part of a team in a swarm, or start pairing with people or a mob, because we have the slack to do so. So when I say focus on the flow of work, not the person, let me talk about why resource efficiency is so big in cost accounting and why it looks so efficient. So if you have experts, and we still have experts back from waterfall thinking, right? The work assignment arrives, the first expert does their part, they hand off, they do the next person does their part, they hand off, et cetera, et cetera. Each of these people is an expert, and there's a delay for all the work, between all the people. And I don't know how many people your team needs for to really make resource efficiency work, but often it's too many people. In flow efficiency, the team works together. Now, am I saying that you always need to work as a mob or an ensemble? No, swarming is totally fine. Pairing is fine. You might have, if you have a 6-person team, you might have 3 people here and 3 people there working on their own stories at one time. But especially for managers, flow efficiency is much more efficient for the speed of decision making. So in flow efficiency, we focus on the flow of work, not what each person does. And that's why we have, in resource efficiency, there's all kinds of delays. In flow efficiency, you might still have delays because you might need more information, but you tend to have many, many fewer delays, and you have many, many fewer multitasking costs. So if you think about a team that you want to work in an agile way, that team needs to work in flow efficiency, right? So let me give you an example of how resource efficiency has really taken over. Have you ever tried to estimate work from the statement of work, right? You have a story, everybody sits there and says, well, I think it's, my part is going to be a 3 and your part's going to be a 2. And if we think about all the pieces of this, it's kind of complex. So we're going to call it an 8 or something like that. And even if you manage the complexity, is that one story still takes you 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, not the 1 or 2 weeks you thought it might take. That's because you're not looking at the delays between all of the people doing the work. So really think about the delays for when you focus on the person instead of the flow of the work. So instead of utilization, teams need, and this is true for management teams, even more than feature or product teams. Why does the organization exist? What is the overarching goal for the organization? Right? That's the strategy. From the strategy, you can say, we have goals for this product now. That's the purpose. And then we can reduce the organizational width and decide what not to do for now. When managers decide what not to do, they serve their teams much, much better when they say, well, we need this and we need that and we need this other thing. So and then the managers look at their value stream and look at where they have weight states, especially for decisions, everybody is much better off. Teams need to look at their cycle time also, but when managers look at their cycle time, it's a totally different problem. That's when they realize they start. My favorite example of management cycle time is this: planning for an entire year, or even just planning for a quarter. I want to say something about SAFe and PI planning. So if you're trying to plan for a quarter and you use push planning, which is how much can we do instead of how little can we commit to, right? Push planning is how much, flow planning is how little, and then what are our options afterwards? Then every single team needs to spend weeks estimating how much they can do. So in a given 12-week quarter, or maybe I guess a quarter is 13 weeks, then teams spend at least the last 4 weeks of the quarter trying to plan for the next planning session for the next quarter. Except how good is that planning? My experience is we really can't plan for much more than a couple of weeks at a time. If we are very lucky, maybe we can plan for a month. But if you're trying to get feedback from customers, you are going to need to change what you do as you proceed. It's just the way it is. So when managers decide what not to do, that's the organizational width. They can support the flow of work through the teams. Any questions about limiting width while I take another drink of water? All right. Okay. So let's talk about performance management. That's the third big idea. Let's just face it, HR exists to keep the company out of court. But HR, and the one way HR thinks they can keep the company out of court is to have an objective performance management system. However, there is nothing at all objective about performance management. First, it does not work. It does not create engagement. Ranking people does not work. How can you possibly take a department of anywhere from 50 to 5,000 people and rank them against each other? Even if you try and rank within a job category, that doesn't work. You cannot compare people or teams because we each work according to our individual preferences and creativity. Some of us work really, really well with some people. Some of us work well with everybody. I am probably not one of those people. Some of us work well with people who appreciate blunt and directness. That's me. So I really like to think about how can we get the best out of every single person without comparing or ranking them? And some managers still think that competition works, right? And it's not about finding the best product, but it's about let's set this team of people against that team of people. That's a kind of competition where everybody loses. So performance management often creates pay disparity because it all depends on where you came in to this band of payment, and then how much you're allowed to get every few months or every year. I mean, it just does not make sense. And the worst part is a lot of people are evaluated based on subordinate goals. So if the overarching goal is to serve these kinds of customers in this kind of a way, that turns in, that's when you get cascading goals that look a lot like management by objectives, or what people think OKRs are, which they are not. OKRs are overarching goals that you might not be able to get to. But subordinate goals often come from that overarching goal, and then they cascade down to each individual person. Back a gazillion years when I was a software developer, and then when I was a project manager, my bosses tried to get me to agree to goals that I would deliver this project or I would deliver something. And I kept saying to them, but I need to work with all these other people. Do they have the same goal? And my boss would say, okay, not right now, but we will. So my team had goals. That was totally reasonable, because now the people that I depended on to work with me we would get rewarded for doing the work that we needed to do together. There was a lot more wrong with that back when I did this in the 70s and 80s, but it was a whole lot better than individual goals that none of my colleagues shared. So when we eliminate performance management, we actually can create engagement. This is where we put theory Y to use. And then we can start by explaining the purpose, the why. Why does this company exist at all levels? We start with the organization, then we go to the management cohorts, then we go through the management cohorts to the products, and we continue to go down all the way to the feature and product teams. And if you work in a work group, such as customer support or customer success, you still have a why for your work. You still have a purpose. When we create engagement with theory Y, we encourage personal and team mastery, and we use flow efficiency, right? We don't create delays between the pieces of work, the tasks. Instead, we have outcome-driven results. So that's where people can really use an opportunistic or serendipitous culture, where people can discover new and interesting work. They can discover new skills. They can create collaboration and much, much more. So once we get rid of performance management, we have all kinds of things. That's because we're all focused on the purpose of the organization, not on our individual goals. Now, everybody needs regular feedback. If you get rid of performance management, people often ask me, what happens then? How will people know what they're doing? Well, regular feedback, at least from a manager, at least every other week. And then I really like teaching the team members to offer feedback to each other and to management at all levels. Respect, empathy, trustworthiness, all of this comes from reasonable feedback, right? We are working to create a better organization together. That's the whole point about feedback. Now, a lot of people ask me what to do instead of performance management. And I say, with managers, have regular one-on-ones to build that trusting relationship. Create goals that support the entire team based on autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? This is, well, you've heard of Dan Pink, but that came out of Desi's self-determination theory. Then if you can create some team-based compensation, if an entire team has this deliverable for this outcome, and the team decides we can deliver this thing for better outcomes, and they check with other people, right, to make sure that what they think is better really is better, and they deliver that, why wouldn't you give them some team-based compensation? We need some individual compensation, but we also need some team-based compensation. And then what I'm going to call jungle gym ladders based on influence, not individual achievement. Yeah. Here's my simplified agile career ladder. So I don't know how many levels you have in your organization. I only put 6 here because, well, I know that some organizations have 15 or 16 levels. I cannot conceive of that. Notice that this is team and product-based influence, right? So focused on the technical product work, product and process-focused influence, and then culture-based people influence. So this a three ladder system allows people to move back and forth between the various kinds of ladders. And is this the right classification? I have no idea. It might be different for your organization. This works for one of my clients who is ready to start experimenting like this. Oh, Karen actually said, companies get stuck in the, oh, we can't give team-based compensation because half the teams are vendors, not employees, which is its own problem. But why can't you give team-based compensation to contractors? What's wrong with that, right? And if they come through a vendor, why can't you do that? I don't understand. If those people contribute to what the team creates, why wouldn't you treat them like human beings as opposed to vendor, right? That's another instance of thinking about resource efficiency. We have resources, right, that come from vendors. I mean, what skin, they don't have any skin in the game. Why not give them a little skin in the game, right? And don't dock their pay because they already did their work. But maybe that's the way organizations get people like me to really commit to the organization. So I'm talking about managing for change and in service of optimizing to learn, right? All of these ideas are very, very different from the way managers work right now. All these ideas are, should I say, heresy to a lot of how your organizations work. So, and you don't have to agree with me, right? None of this requires agreement as long as you're experimenting and learning as you go. So I say start with management information. If you want an agile transformation, if you want continuous product innovation and value delivery, you get that with an overarching goal for all the teams. You get that by reducing WIP so you can actually figure out what you're not going to do. And then when you eliminate performance management and hopefully do a little bit of team-based compensation, everybody pulls together. It's a very, very different culture. So those are the 3 big ideas. These are the 7 modern management principles. And I hope that you saw some of these in my little stories today. I really hope that we stay in touch. I do have a new book out as of today for your nonfiction, for your inner nonfiction writer. I would love to link with you on LinkedIn. Please take a look at my newsletter, and I will stop the share now so I can see what the questions are. Okay. All right. So GS, you have a question or a hand up. All right. GS is doing something else or is trying to figure out how to go off mute or something.
I'm gonna try and unmute GS. Oh, wait.
No, he or she took his hand down. Okay, who has a question?
Good evening, Joanne. Keith Woolley from InfoTrend, and thank you. One of the items you covered had to do with delegation, and the comment that struck me was delegating problems and outcomes, not tasks. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, if you would, please.
Absolutely. So a lot of times managers say, well, managers new to delegation say, we have all this work to do. I would like you, person A, to do this piece, you, person B, to do this piece, you, person C, to do that piece, you, person C, D, to do this piece. But you don't have a finished product or a finished feature until all people deliver their pieces, right? That's resource efficiency thinking. So instead, if you use flow efficiency thinking and say, team, we have this problem in the product we would like to solve. Here's the problem. The outcome we want is solve this problem for this kind of a customer. And you might have to have some guidelines and constraints on what the team does. Then you establish those and say, got it? And the team says, yes, and they go off and do it. So there's a very big difference between delegating a problem with an outcome than a task. And it's even more important if you're working on your process. So the example I give in the books is about code review and coding guidelines. So back in my day, we had a lot of coding guidelines and guidelines about code review. And so my boss actually said, we, as a team, we could not actually agree to what to do for coding guidelines. I wanted one thing, somebody else wanted another. My boss finally said, I'm going to decide, because none of you can decide. And that's when we all said, no, we will finally decide. This is the problem you want us to solve, is our code does not look similar enough for other people to pick up our code. We got that part, we're gonna take it, we're gonna take this, and then the next hour, we're gonna fix this, right? So he delegated that problem with the outcome for us. Now, code review was a slightly different problem. Some of us wanted all code to be reviewed. Some of us only wanted code over a certain complexity to be reviewed. And so when my boss started to hear that, he said, how are you going to solve this? And I said, how about we all take an hour, guys, and we'll all figure this out and come make it an experiment. Come to a conclusion as an experiment and give ourselves a week or two to get the data from the experiment and then decide what to do next. So that one was also a delegation. That was a process delegation again. And that one allowed us to actually use the viewpoints of the various people in the team as experiments. And that also worked really well. So, yeah. Other questions?
Are there other questions, folks? Please don't be shy. Good information here.
Well, I have a team now, and I've had them for about 6 months. They're not developers, they're business analysts. So, but we're still trying to do Agile. We have board, we have stories, we have estimates, we plan to capacity on a weekly basis, things like that. And so what I'm struggling with is to getting them to collaborate, because they seem to all want to just go off on their own and just like finish their piece, right? And I think you've talked a lot about the collaboration today. So like, how do I I want them to self-organize, right? That's the agile principle, right? Like they need to find their own way to work together, but they don't seem to end up working together consistently from one week to the next. So I, just wanted to see if you have any input.
Oh, I have plenty of ideas. So who do you want them to work together with? The rest of the developers and testers? So you create a cross-functional team, or do you want them to work with other business analysts?
Other business analysts, like, so that they can do like knowledge share, right? I trained them like in different areas, and now I want them to share knowledge.
Okay, so you might ask them first, is that the best use of your time? Because they might feel so much pressure from working with the teams that they don't want to spend time with other business analysts. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing is to create a Kanban board with WIP limits. I never plan to capacity. Never, right? I always leave a little slack for the team because something happens. We get a request for something. So if I think we have capacity for, I'm going to talk about stories just because, it's business analysts. If I think that we have capacity to define 10 stories in a week, I will only plan for 5. And then I will pull more stories in when we have finished those 5, which means that if you have, how many people on the business analyst team?
3 plus me, so like 4 now.
Oh, so I would only plan for 2 stories at a time.
Okay.
2 simultaneous stories and use WIP, work in progress limits.
Mhm.
And that means if you're not allowed to open up a new story, right, to work on something new, you have to work with somebody else.
Okay.
Right. So that's how you create a board of WIP limits. And I have plenty of Kanban boards on my website that you might want to look at with WIP limits. There are probably plenty without WIP limits because everybody starts off in a different place. So really think about who do you want people to collaborate with, and what is the value of that collaboration? Good luck. Yeah.
Yep.
Other questions?
Oh, Jesse Fuel is a great speaker. You'll have a really good time next month with him.
Yeah, he is he's so energetic and always brings very, how do I say this? He brings ideas in a very lightning manner, so passionate. So yeah, I think it's a treat to have him.
Yep. Other questions?
Okay, going once, going twice. And sold. All right. Thank you, John. I really appreciate your presentation today. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did as well. Very informative, very useful, to help us put these things into practice, and very much appreciate it. As you both noted, the next meetup for the Enterprise Agility Champs will feature Jesse Fuel. This is on July 28th, so please mark your calendars for that. Encourage you to look up Jesse on LinkedIn. He's also an author, and he's let's see, where was I? Just gonna highlight a couple of things. He's the founder of Fuel Innovation LLC. Like I said, he's an author, and we're really looking forward to have him with us next month. Toby, Meenakshi, anything else we should talk about before we close this up?
Yeah, no, I'll also sign up and become a member so that we can send out information to you. We're not going to send you any any flyers or
Marketing.
milk discount coupons or anything like that. It's just Agile here. A lot of passionate Agilists. And I think where we separate ourselves from the other meetups is that we bring really subject matter experts and authors. We have a very strong filtration process of who we bring in, and we focus on very advanced topics. So definitely would love to have you all become part of our meetup, and we look forward to seeing you in July. Meenakshi.
Thank you. Thank you again, Johanna, for your time and energy. And thank you all for your questions. We look forward to you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.